Now, over the years, there have been so many trends coming and going in terms of communication, advertisement, social media platforms, and everything in between. And we are always on to the next trend. However, today we are joined by somebody who's been in the advertising, copy, and content writing game for a very long time. And he knows what actually works and what doesn't. I'm super excited to be joined by Malcolm Auld, who has recently launched also his brand new book, Direct Mail, the real digital disruptor. How good is that? Malcolm, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you?
Good to see you, Petra, and thank you for having me. Well, at the moment in time, Sydney's flooding again for the fourth time in 6 months. So we're safe, but it's just not very pleasant outside. So nice to be inside.
I bet. And, as I said before, you've been in copywriting, content, direct marketing, advertisement for a long time. You've seen trends coming and going. What have you seen over the years to be true?
I think the simple truth is following trends is not what you should be doing. In fact, that's what's caused more problems than anything. The principles generally remain the same. In communicate, when you're communicating and this rush to all these new trends about all these people online trying to sell you new ways of doing things, when in fact we still buy emotionally and we justify rationally. It's simple as that. And as long as you can write persuasively, no matter what the media, nothing has really changed in the way you motivate people. There are some changes in one of the few times ever there's a bit of change in consumer behaviour coming through. And that's with the emerging generation that's starting work now. And I know from teaching at university, they are much more used to texting and digitally communicating rather than, one of their biggest fears is talking to humans in the office or people that they don't understand at work. And they find it intrusive if you simply call them without texting to set up a phone call. So you're going to start to see that, and the other thing is with these apps like Slack, for example, what I'm seeing is a complete lack of respect, not in marketing communications, but in business communications, where, I've consulted to a digital agency where you could throw a blanket over the team, all sitting around tables together, and they're literally having arguments on Slack when they could lean over and touch the person they're talking to. This whole, I'll say things online that I would never say face to face, and you're seeing a complete lack of ethics and manners appearing, or the old-fashioned, not old-fashioned, but just basic manners and common sense seems to be disappearing because everyone's a keyboard warrior now. But from a marketing communication point of view, not a lot has changed, except that from a channel point of view, as you know, the reason I wrote the book is the performance of digital channels is really struggling. We can talk about that later. And so you're seeing channels that have always worked coming back into the fore again.
I was curious your take on the younger or the next generation, how they perceive direct communication, because as you said, they are communicating very differently. And to be honest, I found myself pointing the finger at when you said, calling, because I find it quite intrusive because of the way how we live and work these days. Yeah. Having said that, that used to be the one and only way how we can get in touch. And young people, they text or send emojis rather than an actual sentence. So I agree with you that you said it's kind of the respect, the next level of communication has been taken away. How does that impact the advertisement and communications industry when they're now talking and advertising to the next generation?
I think if you talk B2B just briefly, if you started your career before this century, or certainly before about 2010, you're excited when the phone rang at work because that was how you did business. If your phone didn't ring, you're in strife. Business was about the phones ringing, right? Mm-hmm. Now that we carry our phone with us and we use it for more than just business and personal, that's why you've got this new filter going on of, well, I'll decide when I'm going to take the call. And that has made it a little difficult for B2B telephone, outbound telephone and calling them. But mind you, once you do get someone on the phone, if they are happy to talk with you, then that's a great channel to do business with. But to the point, it is going to change a little bit how you reach some of those younger folk in business because they've got all these filters. I teach advertising subjects at university, and 60% of the students have ad blockers on their software so they can't see advertising. I mean, what the hell are they doing studying advertising, right? You know, it's known as the greatest consumer protest in history, close to 2 billion people on the planet. And in Europe, something like 40% of some countries are blocking marketing messages on their digital channels, which is another reason why digital is struggling to pay for itself. So yeah, it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time. And it's why tactile, you know, I talked about mail, is coming back into its own, because curiously, there's not one of my graduates who, when they graduate, hold up a digital image of their graduation degree, their Bachelor of Business or whatever it is. They don't hold up a digital image of it. They have a printed version, which is framed, and they put it on their wall because they want to see the real thing. Not one of them says, oh, let me save an image on my Apple phone or on my watch, and I'll show that to people that I've got a degree. You know, they want the hard copy, and they're photographing themselves holding the hard copy outside the university with their mortar cap on, you know.
Now, you have claimed and owned the space of direct marketing, direct communication forever and today. So I'm curious, what actually got you in there? Because you've held very senior roles in very large, you know, organizations. What got you in there?
Look, I started work before I was old enough, legal enough to go to a pub, because I was young in high school. So I turned 18 when I already had a suit and a tie and a briefcase, and I was studying. I did 8 years of study. So I did a degree over 6 years, part-time, and then 2 certificate courses, including the first ever direct marketing certificate. And one of the first jobs of marketing I found myself in, it was B2B. Well, most of it was, and we were building databases. And I really got to love the whole measurable way of using mail and phone as a way of generating leads and closing sales. And so very early on, I got involved in direct marketing, as it's known, and the management of databases and communication, segmenting, testing, all the things that we do online now. Nothing's new, except in those days, the channels were telephone and mail. And so I started off on the client side, and then using those skills, because I was one of the few with really hands-on experience, because I built databases, I tested, I did a lot of stuff in the early days of that category. I was pinched by Ogilvy and Mather to go and work there. So I jumped to Ogilvy and Mather Direct, the agency side. And since then, I've run a number of agencies. I've run startups. I've had my own email software as a service company, online cruise business, retail travel agency, retail supermarket. So I've worked hands-on, both on client side and on agency side.
And now back to direct marketing, especially mail and mailing campaigns. And, you know, as you just said before, your book, I've devoured it in a second. I got it because there are so many practical examples, and I love how you measure everything, because, you know, often when something new comes up that people are not necessarily familiar with, there's often the worry or the consciousness, oh, I'm not sure if it works and so forth. Having said that, you bring something quote unquote old back. So yeah. I think when others seek, you seek. What got you into this?
Look, I generally swim against the tide. I like to focus on focus on facts, not fashion. And so I'm not necessarily always the most popular around, but I just like, and particularly B2B, I like the tag. You can have so much fun. I've always said B2B marketing is the most fun you can have in the industry, because what you're creating goes through a doorway. So it's 3-dimensional. It's not 2-dimensional. You know, it's not a single image. It's a 3-dimensional piece that you're hand delivering, you know, that gets into senior decision makers. And I like the fact that even very often you'll deliver something like that. And even if they don't buy or don't ask for an appointment, they'll contact you and thank you for the piece. You know, they'll just say, well done, appreciate it, or whatever. So that's the brand building that goes along with it. So I did like that. And then of course, it's the consumer area is the same. And you're seeing more and more in consumer marketing with home delivery services and shopping online. The direct way of marketing is growing. And these days, the best way for it to perform well is to integrate your mail and your digital. So when you're going out with your mail, you support with email and with social media advertising, so that the two of them work together. Because what usually happens is, for an attribute point of view, the mail is what drives the interest. And then eventually they click on something they see online and place the order, you know, or respond. So the two work hand in hand, and both perform better when you integrate them.
And this is also what your book is all about. How can you basically leverage one channel and platform with the other? It's not just the one or just the other. It's working together. And, I totally agree. When you get something in the mail and it's something physical, you immediately have a positive response to it. Because hardly ever we get something to start with, and especially when you get something that's of value. Can you give us a few examples that you also pointed out in the book?
Okay, yeah, I will. And you made an interesting point there, because what the physical does is it drives different parts, different chemicals in the brain in different places in the brain to digital. And your physical motivates all five senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. Digital is sight, sound, touch. So it affects different parts of the brain. And the print area affects brains more receptive and positive towards brand association and engagement than what digital do. All the science has shown this in terms of neuro studies and things like that. I won't go into all that. But well, it's interesting. I teach a postgraduate subject in digital marketing or digital branding. And one of the students there has just launched in the middle of COVID a gymnasium in Sydney called Locker Room. I'm interviewing him next week. He was complaining they couldn't get results through LinkedIn, and quite rightly. It's the new social selling spam is LinkedIn. And so I said, well, why don't you look at 3D Mail? Because the gym is only limited to 100 members, and they're all CEOs or senior leaders. And it's quite a few $1,000s to join. So he created 3D mailings. One of them has a boxing glove. And these were delivered with a letter, and it said, to get the other glove and a free boxing lesson, come and have a tour of the gym, RSVP. And he's been testing QR codes and SMS as response devices, right? Because it's one-on-one. I think his first campaign, he hand delivered a bunch of them, cost $600, and he got two sales, which is close to 20 grand, off that, and huge brand awareness for all the others, because they're not going to throw the glove out. It's going to sit there on the desk or on the shelf or something like that. So, but you've got to be right. I mean, I've also had a lot of failures over the years, and I remember American Express one was a poster which was in a mailing tube, and it went to the top 5% of card members of American Express. And these are people who spent a lot of money on a charge card. And what happened was it was mailed without checking the list. And when a post tube comes through your front door, through your letterbox, it's an exciting thing. As you said, you receive it, you open it up now. And the offer was, if you book one person, you get the second person free to go to Hayman Island, luxury resort holiday, if you pay with the Amex card. The problem was a lot of the mailing tubes went to post office boxes. So how do you know when you've got a mailing tube in a post box? You get a little red card that says, come down to Aussie Post in our business hours, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. or whatever. Mm-hmm. So the most senior executives either sent their secretaries or went themselves to pick up a piece of advertising. They actually cut up their cards and sent them back to Amex and said, get stuffed. You wasted my time. So it won an award at ADMA for response rate because it sold out every room, but it also lost some of their most valuable customers from a lifetime value point of view. So it's getting the list right is the key to any one-to-one communication, be it email, phone or mail, or even social. And they didn't think that through. So it's, and I've had buildings evacuated from mail packs that had laser guns in them and things like that. So
I read this example with the laser gun. I was like, oh my God, my heart literally dropped when I read that, because clearly people in defense, they thought it's going to be an attack. Yeah. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, so I've had a mail pack blown up by the bomb squad in a mining town out in West Australia once, which was filmed on the news over there. One of the news choppers filmed it. So
now,
the client wasn't happy.
Or if you work with a client, how do you go about ideating the concept? Because what we also need to define is it's not just the letter that you get. The letter is on top of something. And how do you determine what you actually sent?
Look, it comes back to the brief. It doesn't matter what media you're using. The most important part of any advertising campaign, marketing campaign, whatever it is the brief. Garbage in, garbage out, it's the old computer term, and it's the same. If your brief is useless, then the creative's useless. And the brief has to be tight, and the agency has to ask questions to ensure the brief's tight, because the tighter the brief, the more expansion you can have in terms of ideas you can create. And the other thing that drives it, of course, is the numbers. So what can they afford? So how much can they afford? What's the cost per lead? What's the conversion rate? Or if you go the other way, what's the cost per sale? right? So here's what we can afford to spend to get a customer. Okay, what are we converting leads to? So if we're converting leads at 10 to 1 and it's costing us $10 per lead, then it's $100 per sale, right? So you do the maths first that says, all right, well, we can spend $100 to get a sale at a conversion rate of 1 in 10. That means $10 a lead. Where can we spend money to get a lead for $10? Do we have someone handing out leaflets on a corner? Do we run television? Do we do direct money? So you do the budget first, and then that defines what you can do from a creative point of view.
And this is such a good approach, because I'm sure you get the rejection or the objection that it's too expensive, but or we can't track it. But what you just did is exactly what we do in digital marketing. We work our way backwards, or we start with the end in mind and then work our way backwards.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because the most trackable medium of all has always been mail until the internet. Well, put it this way, you can track the responses and therefore you know the non-responders. What the beauty of what's happened with QR codes and pearls is that if you send a mail piece out now, or an email, let's talk about mail for a sec, you've got three actual responses. You have those who respond and do what you want them to do, the hot prospects. You have those who respond in terms of they scan the code or they go to the website, the landing page, but they don't do what you want. They're the warm prospects. And then you've got those who don't respond at all. So you've got 3 ways to follow up. The first one is you go for the hot prospects, obviously, first to close them. Then you go to the warm prospects to try and nudge them along a bit further. And then you go to the cold ones to have another shot, just to see if you can convince them. Because not everyone's going to buy on every day of the week, and you never know when they're going to buy. You can't convince your whole list. But you should never send anything out on its own and think that's it. You should always have the follow-up in train ready to go, so that it goes out based on what the responses are. So that's the beauty of the internet now, is it allows you to know who didn't respond and who responded but didn't quite get there. So you can follow those up and you can remarket to them. You can mail them again. You can send them an email, a reminder, an SMS or something like that, depending on what data you hold. I mean, interestingly, I've just been dealing with a company that provides particular home services, and they've done over 500,000 of these. And they've asked us for advice on mail. And I said, well, can you give me the list, the mailing list of your customers? And they sheepishly said they don't have one. They never got their home addresses. They just collected the email address. I'm just gobsmacked.
But this is actually one of the questions that I want to ask, because if I go through my database, I don't think I have one address, because I've never collected it either. How does a company or an individual business owner, how do they get started when they've got, say, 5,000 people already, but 0 email addresses?
Well, the first thing you do is you don't listen to a digital marketer telling you people won't fill out forms, right? This is what they went, people won't fill out forms, just catch your email address. Oops, just BS, People have filled out forms for decades if they're interested enough. Now, you might get a few less not filling out the form. Well, then you don't want them, So what you do is, when you're looking to build your database, be it online or however, is you offer to get the name, the address, the email address, the phone, and you give them reasons why. Because we're going to mail you something of value, or because, so you ask for that. Or the other thing is, you maybe just hire some slaves, and what their role is to convert that name and company name into the physical address for that person. Now, COVID and working from home has changed things a little. So you may have to go to some people, if you already know them, and say, I'm sending you something. Can you please give me the best postal address? And they may choose to give you a home address or a post office box separate to the company one. But these days, people are still turning up at the office 2 to 3 days a week. So if you mail it, they will get it. But if it gets there today, don't necessarily expect an answer tomorrow, because they may not be in for another 5 days.
Absolutely. And also, you mentioned that one of the most important pieces in the package needs to be the letter, and it should be obviously personalized. But if we have to send out 100, 200, 500 letters, how do we go about personalizing every one?
Okay. Not personalized like I gave you, where I hand wrote the salutation. Look, technology is such that, and people know from business, that letters can be typed. Right? So in other words, it says, Dear Petra, right? And then what you can do is you can use a signature font with variable data printing in blue, and it looks like handwriting. It's been signed, right? So the issue with letters, and it's interesting, in this century, the first 20 years, there's been a slight decline in the amount of words per mail pack. It's only marginal. but we do have a generation coming through that likes its visual. Okay, so what you're going to start to see is letters looking more like what I call letter brochures, where you've got visuals incorporated into the letter and things. You know, the fundamentals are still there. If you use highlights, use bold, indenting, all those things to make the page look attractive rather than look like a long novel or essay. Those tricks still work just as they work in email, or they did work in magazine and newspaper.
Mm. And, you know, we've got a lot of corporate professionals and leaders listening to the podcast. They need to get out to either, you know, get clients in to build their brand. So hopefully they've got already some ideas. One idea that I also want to ask you about is we also have thought leaders who build their brand through a book, and obviously sending direct mail is a massive brand builder. Like your book is so heavy, as in weighty, which is beautiful.
It cost me a fortune to mail.
It would, but the immediate association is high quality, you know, top notch, without you having to say anything. So it does speak for yourself. How would we go about sending, say we've written a book, but instead of just sending the book, what could be your, you know, way into getting a speaking engagement or public relations?
Yeah, look, I think, well, there's probably three questions you've got in there. Firstly, mail the book, give a covering letter. I mean, I've gone full on with personalisation, but, you know, that's because I'm demonstrating. But if you want to mail your book, what I would do is do a personal letter to the prospect and maybe put which I've done with this, I put post-it notes where there's examples relevant to the people I'm mailing to. So you just tip in and you say, you might be interested in this paragraph here or something like that. Or if it's an image, you know, have a look at this. So that makes it extremely personal by just having gone out of the way and just put a little thing like that. So now, if you're looking for speaking engagements, I suppose it depends who you're targeting. Are you targeting an industry association that's looking for speakers? You're targeting a speakers bureau. Are you targeting a conference organizer? You know, or you're just wanting to let them know that you're available. If they want to book you, have a look at this video of me speaking at a previous event, you know, on a website. So, you know, to gain speaking, I suppose you've got to be seen as a good speaker and have good references about that. I just haven't been doing it for so long. It just, you know, I just have.
And again, you see when I was saying, like, even just this personalized note taking, that it could be even the same page that you send 10 people there, because they've got all the same. Exactly, they wouldn't know, but it's like, oh, for me. And it's also reduces the not action takers. Like when I say, oh, it's a book, I'll read it tomorrow, it never comes. But if I see this one post-it notes, of course I'm looking at it, and that could be a way your way in.
Yeah, and that's that simple. I'll call it surprise and delight. It's probably overstating it, but you've taken a little bit of effort to say this might be of interest to you, you know. And I've taken time to think. You know, I tell all my account managers, find a reason to send something to your clients once a week. That's either to do with their pets that they like, or but generally to try and do it with their work. But, you know, if you can find something about the industry that's overseas, and look at this today with Google, you can pull up an industry report, you can pull up a news report, anything, and just share it and show them that you're interested in them. And you'll go a long way, because clients want to think that you're thinking about them all the time. And you can demonstrate that these days. You know, so mail allows you to do it even better. I think I mentioned to you the other day, you know, I had a cousin who sold a business, and as he was building it up, he rang every time he got a new debtor. He would ring to find out who the accounts clerk was that processed the invoices. And he wrote he didn't email, he mailed his invoices personally to those accounts clerks and attached a $2 scratchy to it to say thanks for processing it quickly. He had positive cash flow in his business, so when he came to sell it, he got a premium rate for it. You know, it's just a simple thing, but common courtesy has gone out the window, and all this rubbish about personalisation online. One, personalisation is, you know, well, I've just written a blog about it. We're celebrating 150 years of marketing personalisation through mail, and it's not new, but they're over egging it now, so it's losing its credibility online. You know, whereas in print, you expect a letter to be personalised. If it's not, you offend people. You know, so by personalising a letter and putting little notes in it, you stand out. And the other reason you stand out is that there's more room in the letterbox these days, because there's no bills. You know, they're all being emailed. And so there's plenty of room to stand out and do something that gets seen.
Absolutely. I love this example with the scratchy note, and it reminds me of an example from a research they did with persuasion. When you get like candies before you actually pay the bill in a restaurant, they give you a higher tip than when you get them after you paid.
After,
And this
yes.
is exactly what we're doing. It's a law of
Obligation.
reciprocity.
Yeah.
I feel obliged that I'm doing something, so I'm paying the invoice straight away rather than just putting it on the table.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not difficult to be polite, and good manners are now conspicuous because they don't exist these days, as much as they should. And when you do have good manners, you stand out, and it doesn't take much to smile, whether you're doing it in print or one-to-one or digitally.
That's a good point in terms of standing out. So we've discussed that the actual medium, meaning direct marketing and direct mail, is a standout, but then also the language, that it is personalized. Is there anything else that would make a campaign even more stand out?
Look, it comes back, any sort of involvement device can help get something seen. As I've said, I say postcards, and I think I picked it up from Keith Goodman in the States, who runs Modern Postcard. Postcards are the only media that get 100% open rate, and that's because they arrive open, and you look at it and you make a call on whether you're going to do something with it or not. You don't have to add anything to that. And yet I've seen, so you see there's examples in there. I've seen a postcard that's one side of its fur because it's selling a dog and cat shelter, so you've actually got a 3D postcard. We personalise postcards saying thank you with a sea turtle, and a thank you is written in the bubble font, for WWF to stop attrition of donors. So even that can get involvement. So if you can get some sort of involvement device that gets them engaged in it, then you've got a better chance of them at least doing what you want to do. Because think about what you're trying to do, and this is what, unfortunately, a lot of what they call digital marketers don't understand. What you're trying to do is talk to people who you may or may not know, or may or may not know you, about something that's probably not of interest to them. And you're trying to get them to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. That's hard shit, right? Right? But you think, let's just slap a little Facebook ad up, and everything will happen with a click here, and we'll measure like. You're trying to persuade people to stop what they were doing and act on your piece of communication. That is really, really difficult. And yet there's these claims that you don't need a marketing degree to be a marketer by digital marketer. Like there's this whole thing, it's easy. Well, it's not. If it was, we'd all be sitting on top of pointy hills, our legs crossed, counting our money with, pilgrims coming to our feet. It's very hard. It's very hard to do what we do. And most people don't understand that. They think it's easy. And because they think it's easy, they churn out crap that doesn't engage people, So anything that you can do that makes it relevant. There was a very interesting one years ago, which I actually talk about in the book, from Cellarmaster Wines, who pioneered a lot of, they were the ones that invented, because you looked at that, you might be interested in this, right, online. And they sent a wine pourer through a flat mail pack in a DL envelope. And you could see the silver through a die cut. There was a hole, you could see this silver, like a wine pourer, how can it be in a flat? When you opened the envelope, it was a silver disc, and you just rolled it and inserted it into the top of the bottle, and it became a wine pourer. It was one of their most successful ever campaign. People were asking, where can we get them from? Because they wanted more than one, they would. So if it's relevant, we mailed, to get farmers to fill in a survey, we mailed a pair of work gloves, and it was win a farmhand for a fortnight, because all the farmers want slave labour, right? And all you have to do is fill in the survey and you go in the draw to win. And it worked its head off, and getting so relevance is key. And the thing about good communication is it comes from an insight. And I've always said, and it's our agency's philosophy, is insight before action. Because one thing you know about your customer or prospect is worth more than anything you know about your product or service. And the problem with most marketing briefs is they're to solve a marketing problem, not a customer problem. We need to flog this crap. We've got to launch the new thing. It's all about us, rather than what problem are we solving for the client? And therefore, how do we write persuasively and communicate in such terms that they'll respond to do what we want them to do? So if you can find out something about your customer, that's why databases are important, then you've got a reason to talk to them, whatever that might be. A little hairdresser down the way from me who just sold in the middle of COVID for a premium, and drives the most expensive convertible German sports car in Manly. She sends out wow cards twice a year. And she calls them wow cards because she gets each of her staff to write a personal message to their customers about something that they know about the customer, right? And thank them for being a customer. And they call wow cards because every time they get them, the customers go, first thing they say is, oh, wow.
I just thought, oh, wow.
Yeah, she gets more business and bookings from that simple card than a social media or her email. So it's not difficult if you know something about the customer to get a response.
Absolutely.
But if all you do is know something about your product or service, then you're fighting to come up with stuff to attract me. And you see, that's what's happening. You're seeing this in all the spam on LinkedIn. You know, I got one yesterday. Your name keeps popping up in my feed, so I thought we should connect. I thought I'll give it 24 hours. And I clicked yes. In less than 24 hours, we sell this. You know, so I straight up lie to meet me, and then a sales pitch. And this is what's happening is social sellers are lying to get a contact. And so the credibility is just disappearing. And that's why the credibility of approaches on LinkedIn is really struggling, because so many people are abusing it and they're using automation when they know nothing about you, or they're relying on an algorithm. So I have a company called The Content Brewery, which was a little brand I set up for content marketing to see what would happen. I constantly get automated offers from salespeople trying to sell me equipment for beer brewing or coffee machines, because the LinkedIn algorithm goes, oh, brewery, therefore that's linked to equipment to make coffee. So these people haven't even looked to see my profile, and they're sending me lies through automation, and they keep chasing me with lies. So the credibility is disappearing rapidly in that space. You know, and that's why if they bothered to find out and they mailed me something, you would have a different response.
And that actually destroys your brand more so than it does anything, because you've got this negative association now with it, even though they mean it nicely and they think automation and technology can actually support them, but it's exactly the opposite. Like we see already we are one of a lot and we weren't even intended to get this. And I love your approach to mixing not only the medium, the direct mail, but then also the different fonts, for example, to make it even more visual and tap into all senses, because this is exactly what's like the wow effect that stands out.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not difficult to do. And unfortunately, what happened was there was a generation who thought, oh, all this is new, therefore everything before doesn't matter, when in fact, we've been ordering remotely, right? Direct to consumer remotely since 1870s, right? The first Montgomery Ward catalogue was 1872, 150 years ago. And it was what you call today drop shipping. They advertised products, and when people bought them, they went and got them from a manufacturer and delivered it to them, right? This is not new. Or, you know, when I had a supermarket, the customers would give us their weekly grocery order. We would pick and pack it, deliver it to their home, and then we would unpack it, often over a cup of coffee with them while they're putting it in the pantry. Now, you just order online, and someone in the supermarket picks and packs, someone else delivers it, and they leave it outside the front door. So the experience has gone backwards. It used to be a better experience before online shopping, right? Because you had this personal relationship. And in fact, the supermarkets have had to brand their delivery people because they call it the last 10 yards. Their brand was suffering damage because, you know, there'd be a knock on the door and Josephine would open up the door and there's somebody with, you know, BO, a blue singlet, 73 gel tats and 15 nose piercings. Here's your groceries, love, right? And there was the Coles brand, right? So what they've had to do is brand the truck, brand the staff, and give them territories to try and get to know. I mean, we know our Star Trek delivery guy now because he's here in the street every day a number of times. So we know his face. He drops in, says hi when they drop stuff to us. So it actually, the move to online ordering hasn't necessarily changed or improved things to what it was before online ordering. All that's changed is the order form.
Yes, and you know, everyone talks about the customer experience, that we need to focus on customer experience as our competitive advantage. But as you said, the customer experience has gone backwards because it's less personal, it's less joyful, because you're just getting a grumpy person. And you know, you mentioned a really good point also, brand by association. So when your delivery person is a grumpy bum and you get greeted with it, all of a sudden you've got a bad association with the brand, even though it could be amazing, but it could do more damage than good.
Yeah, well, it's like a website. Have you ever tried to find human support on a website these days, or somewhere to call a phone? All they do is they force you to do it yourself. So customer service has not gone from customer service, it's gone from customer DIY. Find what you want and hope the FAQs that we've supplied answer your question, which they never do. Then if you want to ring us, we hide the phone number. And then if you do call, you wait on a queue talking to a computer that says, speak this, and you say it and then it doesn't understand, and then you're on hold and you go around the loop, blah, blah. You know, like all we've done is reduce customer service, yet we use this jargon like CX and UX about customer experience. Get rid of all the CX and UX and just get some humans on the phone. You would fix customer service straight away. You know, you've got Telstra at the moment saying we're coming back to give you local service. Well, they're coming back because people complained so much that the people they spoke to didn't speak the language or understand what was going on. They've had to change their service, and they're bringing humans back to call centres in Australia because of customer demand.
Mm. And I love how you take something old into the next world and put a new spin on it, because you're not just ignoring technology, but you're integrating a campaign to make it even more efficient, and also leveraging technology to make it more personal and create a better experience. So honestly, I'm excited for you to disrupt the current way of advertisement and marketing. Now, what's next for you? Where can we connect with you, work with you, and all of the good stuff?
Well, look, you'll find me on LinkedIn, as you know, and I've my own website, malcomaulddirect.com.au. I did have malcomauld.com, but I don't know what happened and how the wholesaler stuffed the renewal up, but I've had a hijacker take it and turn it into a porn site, and they're threatening me to buy it off me or damage my reputation. So if you go to malcomaulddirect.com, you'll find porn. But if you go to malcomaulddirect.com.au, you'll find me.
Love the story.
So there you go.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, for disrupting the industry and being the trusted authority in this space.
Always enjoyed chatting with you, Petra. You know that. So thank you.
Thank you.